With a full moon shining brightly overhead, you're looking live at Launch Pad 0A at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport on Wallops Island, Virginia, where Northrop Grumman's Antares rocket stands fully fueled, 133 feet tall, ready to launch 31 minutes from now to send the unpiloted Cygnus cargo craft into orbit on a 3-day journey to deliver some 4 tons of supplies and scientific experiments to the International Space Station. Following a last-minute scrub of last night's initial launch attempt, tonight's liftoff is set for 8:16 and 14 seconds p.m. Central Time, 9:16 and 14 seconds p.m. Eastern Time at the start of a 5-minute launch window. The weather for tonight's launch just couldn't be better. It is absolutely pristine at Wallops Island, just a few clouds at 4,500 feet, winds out of the northwest at 4 knots, temperature of about 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Everything is green across the board. And there is the target for the Artemis program coming up for NASA, the moon, with sights set on that destination to land the first woman and the next man on the surface of the moon in 2024. Good evening from Mission Control in Houston and the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center. Flight controllers here are watching over the station as they do 24/7, 365, tending to its systems and the 3 crew members comprising the Expedition 63 crew. We'll talk more about them in a moment. Back at the Wallops Flight Facility, Northrop Grumman engineers are monitoring the countdown at this hour from the Range Control Center. They will be in control of the 9-minute climb to orbit for the 2-stage Antares rocket from liftoff to the point when the Cygnus resupply craft separates from the vehicle's second stage. They just completed a poll of all of the engineering positions just a moment or two ago. Everyone is go for launch. In Dulles, Virginia, another team of Northrop Grumman engineers are on duty as well, ready to take over the flight of Cygnus after spacecraft separation under the direction of Mission Director Zach Dwyer. They'll be following all of Cygnus's maneuvers during its 3-day trek to the International Space Station. Back here in Mission Control in Houston, the Orbit 3 team of flight controllers is on duty with the station crew members well into their sleep period for the night. As was the case last night, Flight Director T.J. Creamer is back in charge, presiding over the Orbit 3 team this evening. Cygnus's launch was originally scheduled for this past Tuesday night, but a forecast of inclement weather at Wallops for both Tuesday and Wednesday night pushed the initial launch attempt to last night. And with the weather finally cooperating last night, the countdown reached the 2-minute 40-second mark before the launch was scrubbed. We'll talk more about that in a moment. At the present time, we're sitting at T-minus 28 minutes and counting. There are no issues being worked by the launch control team at Wallops. As we mentioned last night, each launch of a Cygnus cargo craft carries with it a tradition for Northrop Grumman, the naming of the spacecraft after a noted space explorer who contributed to human space exploration. The Cygnus being launched tonight is named for NASA astronaut Kalpana Chawla, who twice flew into space, first on the STS-87 mission aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia in 1997, and then on the ill-fated STS-107 mission aboard Columbia in 2003, in which she and her 6 crewmates lost their lives during entry. Kalpana Chawla, the first NASA astronaut of Indian and South Asian descent, being honored on this mission of Cygnus to the International Space Station. The Antares rocket being launched tonight is a 2-stage rocket that will propel the Cygnus cargo craft to its preliminary orbit to begin the chase to reach the International Space Station in the wee hours Monday morning. But before we look ahead, let's look back 24 hours to last night's postponement. And with us this evening by phone to discuss all of these developments, returning tonight with us, is Christina Halona, the Northrop Grumman Antares System Engineering Program Manager. Christina, thanks for joining us once again this evening.
Thank you, Rob. I'm excited to be back with you and our NASA TV viewers to see a successful Antares launch and Cygnus mission to the International Space Station.
Everything's looking great tonight, but before we get into all of that, walk us through last night's scrub. What was the cause? How did Northrop Grumman remedy the issue that brought us to this evening's launch attempt?
No problem, Rob. So Last night during the countdown, the computer auto-aborted at approximately T-minus 2 minutes and 49 seconds when it received an off-nominal reading from the ground support equipment. The team tracked the automated abort to a software issue, and it was resolved. Nonetheless, launch scrubs for ground systems issues do sometimes occur as we place mission success and the safety of our team and the public above all other considerations. As can be seen from the numerous scrubs this launch has had this past week, including Delta IV and Falcon 9 due to weather and ground system faults, each and every countdown will not always result in a launch attempt, which is just simply part of the launch business. Our Northrop Grumman team is trained to respond professionally to scrub launch attempts in order to maintain Antares and Cygnus in a safe condition. We always quickly investigate the root cause if there's any issues and maintain readiness to launch as early as the next day. I just want to say what a great teamwork it was by the launch team last night and this morning to quickly respond to the scrub launch attempts and put us back in position to launch again less than 24 hours later. We are a go for tonight, so we're excited.
Christina, this Antares rocket has become a workhorse for Northrop Grumman in contributing to that supply chain for the International Space Station. How robust is this vehicle? How important is tonight's launch as we head into a busy period aboard the International Outpost?
So, Rob, NG-14 was designated as a mission essential mission by NASA during the COVID-19 pandemic, and our team has been focused on being ready on time despite the additional restrictions and mitigations put in place to keep our workforce safe. The Antares launch system and the Virginia Space Launch Pad we both use are designated to be very robust, which has allowed us to achieve 7 consecutive successful Antares 230 and 230 plus flights that enabled successful Cygnus missions to the ISS. Antares is our 230 plus workforce, and we are carrying Cygnus loaded with nearly 8,000 pounds of cargo tonight. Northrop Grumman is very proud of our contributions in supplying critical research and cargo to the crew on the space station. And for me personally, as a Native American from the Navajo Nation, I am truly honored to be part of our human exploration program, and I hope to inspire others to reach for the stars when setting their goals.
Thank you very much, Christina. Christina Halona of Northrop Grumman with us this evening by phone. The countdown for Cygnus's launch now stands at T-minus 23 minutes, 14 seconds, and counting. At the time of launch at 8:16 and 14 seconds p.m. Central Time, 9:16:14 p.m. Eastern, the International Space Station and its 3 residents will be flying 258 statute miles over the southern Indian Ocean. Antares and Cygnus will arc out to the southeast from Wallops to start the rendezvous and a series of pre-programmed engine firings that will lead to its arrival at the International Space Station and its robotic capture Monday morning. Station Commander Chris Cassidy of NASA, backed up by Russian cosmonaut Ivan Wagner from Roscosmos, will be in the cupola at the robotic workstation monitoring Cygnus' systems during its final approach, with Cassidy using the Canadarm2 robotic arm to reach out and grapple the Northrop Grumman resupply vehicle. At that point, he will turn the robotic chores over to a team of ground controllers here in Houston who will maneuver Cygnus into an installation position to be installed and bolted into place on the Earth-facing side of the Unity module of the International Space Station for a stay of about 2 months. The Cygnus is scheduled to depart the station in mid-December for a 2-week free flight in which additional scientific experiments will be conducted.
Copy not required.
On board the International Space Station, Cassidy, Wagner, and Russian cosmonaut Anatoly Ivanishin are asleep at this hour, less than 3 weeks away from the end of their 6.5-month mission on the orbital outpost. They are scheduled to return to Earth on the evening of October 21st U.S. time, which will be the morning of October 22nd on the steppe of Kazakhstan, for a parachute-assisted landing in their Soyuz MS-16 spacecraft. That will come 8 days after the arrival of the next trio of residents to the International Space Station, NASA astronaut Kate Rubins, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Sergei Kud-Sverchkov of Roscosmos, who are in final training right now at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan for their launch on October 14th in the Soyuz MS-17 spacecraft. Inside 21 minutes until launch, everything continues to proceed on track and on time for a liftoff at 8:16 and 14 seconds p.m. Eastern Time.
We'll check 379.
The ascent profile for Antares and Cygnus following liftoff calls for main engine cutoff on the first stage of the Antares rocket about 3 minutes and 18 seconds after launch, followed 6 seconds later by the separation of the first stage. Some 30 seconds later, the fairing, which encapsulates the Cygnus resupply vehicle, will also separate, exposing Cygnus during the uphill ride to its preliminary orbit. Stage 2 ignition on the Antares rocket is scheduled at about the 4-minute, 7-second mark into the flight. It will burn for 2 minutes and 44 seconds until Stage 2 burnout occurs, putting Cygnus into its initial orbit, with the Cygnus vehicle itself separating from the second stage of Antares at about the 9-minute, 9-second mark into the flight. The Ultraflex solar arrays on Cygnus are scheduled to be deployed about 2 hours and 8 minutes into the mission. We will not be on the air live during that activity. It's about a 30-minute procedure. We will, however, provide updates on the web on nasa.gov and the station blog site when solar array deploy is completed later this evening. If everything goes as planned, Cygnus again will arrive in the wee hours Monday morning at the International Space Station, arriving along the intersection called the R-bar, the radial vector, which is an imaginary line drawn between the International Space Station and the Earth. The Cygnus will arrive about 400 feet directly below the station and inchworm its way up to the point where Cassidy will use the robotic arm to reach out and grapple the resupply craft. The capture of Cygnus is scheduled right now at 4:20 a.m. Central Time, 5:20 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday morning.
And Ops to LC, countdown?
Good, LC.
Yeah, just be advised, step 386 will be required for today's op.
Copy that.
And LC, this is prop lead. Actual F1N level is 10 of 10.
Copy 10 of 10, 381, core 1. Provide status on F1N level.
LC core 1, countdown 1, standby.
As we approach the 17-minute mark into the countdown, propellant loading is complete. You see the venting at the interstage area of the two-stage Antares rocket. Everything continues to be green across the board at Wallops. The weather is perfect. Everything all set for Antares to begin its flight to deliver the Cygnus resupply vehicle to its preliminary orbit.
And CMDLC, countdown 1.
LC core 1, countdown 1.
Go ahead, core 1.
Fuel level adjustment is not required.
Copy, not required. We'll go ahead and check 382. And prop 2, step 383, configure OCCS for no adjustment to fuel level. CMD-LC, countdown 1.
LC to CMD.
Yeah, you go for step 385. You can transfer Cygnus to launch mode.
LC CMD, in work.
2. LC, this is Prop 2 and countdown 1. OCCS configured for no adjustment to fuel level.
At T-minus 16 minutes and counting, those calls from the Range Control Center engineers for Northrop Grumman indicate that the fuel loading for the Antares rocket is at the proper level, into stable replenish now. No adjustment for fuel required this evening, and Cygnus is about to go on internal power. Tonight's launch kicks off a very busy period of activity at the International Space Station. Again, a launch tonight results in Cygnus arriving at the station in the wee hours Monday morning. That will be followed in a couple of weeks by a Soyuz crew rotation, as we mentioned, with Kate Rubins of NASA and her 2 Russian crewmates scheduled to launch October 14th from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan for a 2-orbit rendezvous, a 3-hour fast-track journey to the International Space Station that will kick off an 8-day handover with Chris Cassidy and his 2 Russian crewmates, Anatoly Ivanishin and Ivan Wagner, who we said a moment ago are in the home stretch of their 6.5-month mission on the station. They'll be returning to Earth on the night of October 21st, U.S. time. And right on the heels of that, on October 31st, on the 20th.
Just passed through T-minus 15 minutes. We'll be coming up on our polling for our final count, proceeding with our final countdown in just about 2 minutes.
On the 20th anniversary of the launch of Expedition 1, Bill Shepard, Yuri Gudzenko, and Sergei Krikalev. On October 31st, the Crew 1 mission is scheduled to launch aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. The Resilience Crew Dragon spacecraft with Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi on board, scheduled to arrive at the International Space Station on November 1st. T-minus 14 minutes and counting.
And CMD, I'll wait for your call on 387.
LC, this is CMD. Cygnus is in launch mode and nominal.
Copy that, CMD. We'll check step 387 complete.
Here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, a final go has been passed on to Flight Director T.J. Creamer by the Cygnus Mission Director in Dulles. Both Antares and Cygnus are go for launch. At this hour, the International Space Station flying 258 miles over the South Atlantic, about to swing just to the south of the continent of Africa. Again, at the time of launch, at 8:16 and 14 seconds p.m. Central Time, the station and its 3 residents who are asleep at this hour will be flying over the southern Indian Ocean.
Countdown 1, step 388. At this time, I want to poll to proceed with final countdown. GSO?
GSO, go.
RSO?
RSOs go.
TD?
TD is go.
Prop lead?
Prop lead is go.
Stage 1?
Stage 1 is go.
MES1?
MES1 is go.
GCE?
GCE is go.
ACE?
ACE is go.
Mars?
Mars is go.
CMD?
CMD is go.
LD?
LD is go.
NG?
In honor of Kalpana Chawla, whose research on astronaut health and safety during spaceflight helped pave the way for humans to live and work in space, Northrop Grumman is go.
Copy that, Northrop Grumman. We are go to proceed with final countdown. Check step 388. Ops 2, LC, be advised, step 389 is not required for today's operation. Step 390 will not be required for today's operation.
And Ops 2 copies.
Coming up on the T-minus 11-minute mark, that final poll for launch conducted at the Range Control Center at the Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia, as Antares is set to begin its journey of about 9 minutes in duration to deliver the Cygnus resupply craft to its preliminary orbit.
And passing T-minus 11 minutes.
Coming up on the T-minus 10-minute mark, fuel loading complete. The weather is perfect. Everything is all set to begin the journey of Cygnus to the International Space Station.
And T-minus 10 minutes.
No issues being worked in the Range Control Center at Wallops Island, Virginia, or at Dulles, Virginia, where the Cygnus spacecraft team for Northrop Grumman monitoring Cygnus' systems ready to take over at the time of spacecraft separation just over 9 minutes after launch.
And Ops 1, Step 391, enable ACS VDMs.
LC Ops 1, ACS VDMs internal power on.
ACS VDMs enabled, voltage nominal, and commands cleared.
Copy that. Elect 1, check 391, check 392. And launch team be advised, Step 393 will not be required for today's operation.
Once Cygnus arrives at the International Space Station in the wee hours Monday morning and is grappled and then installed and bolted into place, a series of leak checks at the berthing interface between Cygnus and the Unity module will be conducted by NASA astronaut and station commander Chris Cassidy, making sure that we have a tight seal between the Cygnus and the station before he begins the process of opening the hatch to Cygnus and the start of the unloading of the most time-critical experiments and supplies that are being brought up on the Cygnus resupply vehicle.
Copy, site control, check Step 394.
Coming up on the 7.5-minute mark until launch. Passing through 7 minutes until launch.
T-minus 7 minutes. And Ops 2, you go to initialize ground ordnance power supplies.
LC Ops 2, ground ordnance power supplies initialized.
LC.
Ground ordnance power supplies Nominal.
LC prop lead, ATSO activation verified.
Copy all there, prop lead, ops 2, elect 1, check 395, 396, and 397.
T-minus 6 minutes and counting. Northrop Grumman preparing to provide Friday night lights down the eastern seaboard. Everything is go for launch.
LC site control, aft stay ECS transfer to GN2 confirmed.
Roger that, site control. Check step 398. And launch team be advised, step 399 not required for today's operation.
Coming up on the T-minus 5 minute mark.
T-minus 5 minutes. Ops 1, transfer avionics to internal power.
LC Ops 1, avionics internal power on. Stand by for command completion. LC Ops 1, external power off.
Internal power is nominal.
Roger that, elect 1, ops 1, open STS umbi-loop.
LC Ops 1, STS umbi-loop open and green.
LC elect 2, FTLU and FTS receiver indications are nominal.
Copy, elect 2. Ops 1, you go to send, all arm command.
LC Ops 1, all arm command sent.
SNAs, ODMs, all arm.
NASA TD, report range status.
LCTD, range is green.
T-minus 4 minutes and counting. Everything in order. No issues being worked at the Range Control Center at Wallops.
And launch team be advised, phase 3 dynamic limits will be active at T-minus 3 minutes.
FC commanded to flight mode.
T-minus 3 minutes and counting.
Auto sequence start. ODM bus voltages and currents nominal.
Copy all, elect 1. GNC1, verify ready for nav mode.
LC, GNC1, orb nav ready for nav mode.
Roger that. Ops 2, step 414, switch to nav.
LC Ops 2, orb nav switch to nav.
Copy that, Ops 2, check 414.
LC, GNC1, orb nav telemetry verified.
Roger that, GNC1.
Coming up on the T-minus 2 minute mark. Antares systems in excellent shape. No issues.
T-minus 2 minutes on my mark. Mark.
.90 seconds until launch.
T-minus 1 minute, 30 seconds. T-minus 1 minute.
Well into the terminal count, T-minus 50 seconds and counting.
T-minus 30 seconds. Mark.
T-minus 15 seconds.
T-minus 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Can we have engine ignition?
Engine start and liftoff. The SS Kalpana Chawla takes flight, sights set on the International Space Station. Pitch and roll programmer in.
Vehicle systems are nominal. Engines at 100%. Attitude nominal. Vehicle subsystems nominal. Engines are steady and nominal. 100%. Altitude 20,000 feet.
1 minute into the flight, everything looking good on Antares.
Passing through max Q. Attitude nominal. Engines at 100.
Antares passing through the area of maximum dynamic pressure.
50,000 feet. Attitude nominal. All vehicle subsystems are nominal.
Coming up on the 2-minute mark into the flight, everything looking good.
Just passing 100,000 feet. Attitude nominal. Vehicle subsystems nominal. Engines remain at 100%. Attitude nominal. Vehicle subsystems nominal.
Good reports from the Range Control Center at Wallops.
30 seconds to throttle down.
Throttle down is the precursor to main engine cutoff for the first stage. Coming up on the 3-minute mark into the flight.
Engines at 55% thrust.
Standing by for main engine cutoff on the first stage.
Main engine cutoff. Stage 1 separation. Attitude nominal.
Stage 1 separation confirmed from the Range Control Center. Antares flying straight and true.
Antares in coast phase until proper conditions for fairing separation and stage 2 ignition are achieved.
Fairing separation confirmed. Cygnus now exposed to the atmosphere as it continues its trek uphill to its preliminary orbit.
Stage 2 ignition.
This will be about a 2-minute 44-second burn of the second stage engine.
Attitude nominal. Attitude nominal, vehicle subsystems nominal, 140 kilometers.
Coming up on the 5-minute mark into the flight.
All systems continue nominal. Altitude 150 kilometers. All systems nominal.
The second stage burnout is scheduled at about the 6-minute 51-second mark into the flight.
Altitude 170 kilometers, roughly 1 minute to stage 2 burnout. Altitude 184 kilometers, all systems nominal, roughly 30 seconds to stage 2 burnout.
Six minutes, 40 seconds into the flight, standing by for stage 2 burnout.
Stage 2 tail-off. Stage 2 burnout.
And Cygnus has reached the preliminary orbital insertion.
Antares will coast for roughly 100 seconds prior to payload separation.
And as you heard, the next major event will be Cygnus's separation from the second stage.
Attitude nominal.
Cygnus has begun its journey to reach the International Space Station early Monday morning.
All vehicle subsystems nominal. Altitude 191 kilometers, roughly 1 minute to payload separation.
Liftoff occurred right on the dime at 8:16 and 14 seconds p.m. Central Time, 9:16:14 p.m. Eastern Time. The International Space Station and its 3 crew members who are asleep at this hour approaching the southwest coast of Australia.
Altitude remains 192 kilometers, roughly 30 seconds to payload separation. All systems nominal.
At the time of Cygnus's separation from the second stage, the operations will move to Dulles, Virginia, and the Cygnus Flight Control Room under the direction of Mission Director Zach Dwyer.
Cygnus separation.
Spacecraft separation confirmed. The SS Kalpana Chawla well on its way to the International Space Station.
CCAM initiated. Attitude nominal. LC, ace out.
All right, Ace, great job calling it out, and great job to the Northrop Grumman and NASA Wallops and everybody else, Mars, on getting this mission off in difficult times. Okay, launch team, we're going to go ahead and proceed now with our post-launch checklist. And prop lead, I assume 425 is already started. And prop lead LC, countdown 1.
Yeah, we've already began our warm helium and cold helium purging.
Okay, copy that. We'll check 425 complete. GNC1 LC, step 426. Let me know when you've provided the Antares state vector to Cygnus.
LC GNC1, state vector submission and work.
Okay, copy and work.
LC.
Go ahead, LD.
LC, this is LD. I'd just like to thank the launch team for an outstanding effort. Way to go, team. Thank you, Mars, NASA, and the Antares launch team. Oh, and Cygnus, too. So thanks, everybody. Great job. Carry on, LC.
Thank you, LD.
This is Mission Control Houston. Cygnus now safely in orbit en route to the International Space Station. A perfect launch from the Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. On the line with us right now is the International Space Station's Deputy Program Manager, Kenny Todd. Kenny, good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, Rob. It's great to be with you. Thanks.
Well, Cygnus now safely en route to the International Space Station after that launch scrub last night. Carrying some 4 tons of supplies and experiments, including a couple of nitrogen tanks. Give us sort of the big picture on what's on board Cygnus, why these nitrogen tanks are important, and some of the other highlights for what this supply run will mean for the international complex.
You bet, Rob. First of all, let me offer my congratulations to the entire Northrop Grumman team. It was a spectacular launch. I don't think you can ever get tired of watching these night launches. And as you said yesterday, creating the artificial dawn for a few minutes there, it's just gorgeous, And the entire launch team there at the Wallops Flight Facility, again, they just do a great job at launching these vehicles. But yeah, we're very excited about having Cygnus off the pad on the way coming to the International Space Station with about 8,000 pounds of cargo, of which over a third of it is really committed to the science and utilization of the space station, and really taking advantage of this low Earth orbit asset where we can do some things in microgravity that quite frankly we can't do anywhere else on the planet. So we're always excited to have new people coming to station and really trying to see what kind of things that they can learn in this environment. So you mentioned earlier about the nitrogen tanks. We were a little anxious to get this flight off the ground because of the fact that it had some additional nitrogen on board. As most people who follow station on a regular basis might have heard, we've been dealing with a pesky little atmosphere leak on board the station for the better part of 3 or 4 months now. Station in general always leaks a little bit, but over the last several months we've seen an increase in that, which anytime you're dealing with a leak on a pressurized spacecraft, you certainly want to know where it is, and you certainly want to make sure that you have enough consumables on board to feed that leak until you find it. And that's kind of where we find ourselves right now, as we're working through several different troubleshooting efforts to try to locate this leak. But getting these tanks on board certainly again helps us up our consumables in the nitrogen area and gives us a little more runway as we try to sort through this issue.
Kenny, the Cygnus vehicle arrives at the station pre-dawn on Monday. This kicks off a very busy period for the station and its crew. If you would, give us a little snapshot of the air traffic control pattern over the next few weeks with crews and vehicles coming and going.
You bet, Rob. Last year we were around this same time frame. I remember doing a press conference and calling last year around this same time frame the season of EVAs, because we were getting ready to swap out batteries, and that was coming with a huge series of EVAs along with fixing the alpha magnetic spectrometer and again another large number of EVAs. This year we find ourselves really with just a season of visiting vehicles, and it starts tonight with the launch of this Cygnus spacecraft. We'll get it on board here Monday morning, and then on the 14th of October, we'll see our next Soyuz spacecraft with our next crew coming to the space station. That particular spacecraft will actually perform a 2-orbit rendezvous on its way to the space station, which hasn't been done before with a crewed spacecraft. So we're pretty excited to see how all that works. And again, it'll be pretty amazing when you think about a crew launching from the ground here and roughly 3 hours later being on the International Space Station. So we're excited. That's coming on October the 14th. And then about a week later, on the 21st, Chris Cassidy and his 2 Russian crewmates will return to Earth after their approximately 6 month stay on board the station. And Kate Rubins, who will then succeed Chris as being the handler of the USOS segment, will have about a little over a week before we see the launch of the next commercial crew vehicle, which would be termed Crew 1, coming to the International Space Station with an additional 4 USOS crew members. And so Kate will be by herself for a short period of time. She's been there before. She understands space station very well and was an excellent crew member when she was on board several years ago. And so we're looking forward to getting her back on. But the crew size will jump on board from 3 to 7 about a week after she gets to orbit. So once we get the crew back up to 7, we'll have about a 3-week hiatus where we won't be dealing with arriving vehicles, but shortly after that, probably somewhere around November the 22nd, we'll see the launch of SpaceX 21, which is a cargo vehicle, and again bringing another several thousand pounds of mostly science and utilization to the space station. So this crew is going to be really busy throughout this full season, leading up to basically the end of the year.
And Kenny, finally, before that happens, we're just weeks away from a coveted anniversary on November 2nd, that being the 20th anniversary of a permanent human presence on the station. In the course of history, in your mind, how significant is that milestone in human exploration? What has it meant for the station and the international partnership?
Rob, we, for those of us that go around and talk around and to people outside our business, sometimes it comes as a shock when we tell them, especially the younger generation that for your entire life, you haven't known a time when there hasn't been somebody living off the planet. And in some ways they know that, and they don't see a world that's any different. But for those of us that have been around a number of years, going to orbit was such an amazing feat years ago, and to think we've been living there for the last 20 years is, almost incomprehensible. But, the thing that really strikes me, Rob, about the fact that we've had international crews living in orbit for the last 20 years is looking down at the Earth and seeing what all has transpired on the Earth in that time frame. With disasters and conflicts, successes and failures and things that have gone on around our planet. And in the midst of all of that, as an international partnership, we know no boundaries. And every crew member that launches almost will come back and tell you when somebody asks what you see when you look down, and it's you don't see boundaries. And that is something that over the last 20 years, I think, really hits home for me is the fact that even with everything that goes on here as we circle around the sun every year, we continue as a partnership to work together and do amazing things, and it's probably one of the most harshest environments known to humans.
Kenny, engineers such as yourself always say that space is hard, which it is, but tonight Northrop Grumman made it look easy, and Cygnus is well on its way to the International Space Station. Kenny Todd, the Deputy ISS Program Manager, joining us tonight. Thanks very much, Kenny. Appreciate it.
Hey, happy to be with you. Take care, Rob. Thank you.
Back here in Mission Control, the Flight Control Team will be working throughout the course of the weekend in concert with Northrop Grumman's Cygnus engineers at the Cygnus Law Control Center in Dulles, Virginia, monitoring all of the maneuvers that lie ahead for the SS Kulpna-Chawla on its approach to the International Space Station for its capture, scheduled at 4:20 a.m. Central Time, 5:20 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday morning. The first major engine burns are scheduled early Saturday morning to increase Cygnus's altitude to match that of the International Space Station, and the correct phasing to bring it into the neighborhood of the International Space Station on Monday morning pre-dawn. This is Mission Control Houston. To recap, the Northrop Grumman Antares rocket lifted off on time from the Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. Launch pad 0A at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport at 8:16 and 14 seconds p.m. Central Time, 9:16 and 14 seconds p.m. Eastern Time this evening. It was a perfect ride to orbit, sending the Cygnus resupply vehicle to its preliminary orbit en route to a 3-day rendezvous that will result in Cygnus arriving at the International Space Station early Monday morning. Our programming on Monday, October 5th, looks like this. We'll start our rendezvous and capture coverage for Cygnus at 2:45 a.m. Central Time, 3:45 a.m. Eastern Time on NASA television. Chris Cassidy, the station commander, NASA astronaut, will use the Canadarm2 robotic arm to reach out and capture Cygnus at 4:20 a.m. Central Time, 5:20 a.m. Eastern Time. We then will take a pause and come back a couple of hours later for installation coverage, where Cygnus will be turned over to the robotic ground controllers here in Houston to install and bolt Cygnus into place on the Earth-facing port of the Unity module of the International Space Station, with our installation coverage beginning at 6:30 a.m. Central Time, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday morning. So with that, we'll wrap up our coverage. Coming up just a moment or two from now will be launch replays of tonight's liftoff of the Antares rocket from Wallops to send Cygnus into its preliminary orbit. For all of us here in Mission Control in Houston, have a safe weekend, and we'll see you once again on Monday morning. This is Mission Control Houston.